New Order are an English rock band formed in 1980. The band currently consists of Bernard Sumner, Stephen Morris, Gillian Gilbert, Phil Cunningham and Tom Chapman. The band was formed in 1980 by Sumner, Peter Hook and Morris, the remaining members of Joy Division, following the suicide of vocalist Ian Curtis with the addition of Gilbert. By combining post-punk and electronic dance music, New Order became one of the most critically acclaimed and influential bands of the 1980s. Though the band's early years were shadowed by the legacy and basic sound of Joy Division, their experience of the early 1980s New York City club scene increased their knowledge of dance music and helped them incorporate elements of that style into their work. The band's 1983 hit Blue Monday, the best-selling 12-inch single of all time, is one example of how the band transformed their sound. New Order were the flagship brand for Manchester-based independent record label Factory Records. Their minimalist album sleeves and non-image reflected the label's aesthetic of doing whatever the relevant parties wanted to do, including an aversion to including singles as album tracks. In 1993 the band broke up amidst tension between the band members, but reformed in 1998. In 2001, Cunningham replaced Gilbert, who left the group due to family commitments. In 2007, Peter Hook left the band and the band broke up again, with Sumner stating in 2009 that he no longer wishes to make music as New Order. The band reunited in 2011 without Hook, with Gilbert returning to the fold and Chapman replacing Hook on bass. During the band's career and in between lengthy breaks, band members have been involved in several solo projects, such as Sumner's Electronic and Bad Lieutenant. Hook's Monaco and Revenge and Gilbert and Morris the other two. Cunningham was previously a member of Marion and with Sumner and Chapman was a member of Bad Lieutenant. History, origins and formation, 1977 1980. Between 1977 and 1980, Ian Curtis, Peter Hook, Stephen Morris, and Bernard Sumner were members of the post-punk band Joy Division, often featuring heavy production input from producer Martin Hannett. Curtis committed suicide on May 18, 1980, the day before Joy Division was scheduled to depart for their first American tour, and prior to release of the band's second album, Closer. The rest of the band decided soon after Curtis's death that they would carry on. Prior to Curtis' death, the members of Joy Division had agreed not to continue under the Joy Division name should any one member leave the band. On July 29, 1980, the still unnamed trio debuted live at Manchester's Beach Club. Rob Gretton, the band's manager for over 20 years, is credited for having found the name New Order in an article in The Guardian entitled The People's New Order of Kampuchea. The band adopted this name, despite its previous use for ex-stooge Ron Asheton's band The New Order. The group states that the name New Order does not draw a direct line to Nazism or fascism. The band rehearsed with each member taking turns on vocals. Sumner ultimately took the role, as he could sing when he wasn't playing his guitar. Wanting to complete the lineup with someone they knew well and whose musical skill and style was compatible with their own, New Order invited Morris's girlfriend, Gillian Gilbert from Macclesfield, to join the band in early October 1980, as keyboardist and guitarist. Gilbert's membership was suggested by Gretton. Gilbert's first live performance with New Order occurred at the Squat in Manchester on October 25, 1980. Movement, 1981 1982, the initial release as New Order was the single Ceremony, backed within a lonely place. These two songs were written in the weeks before Curtis took his own life. With the release of Movement in November 1981, New Order initially started on a similar route as their previous incarnation, performing dark, melodic songs, albeit with an increased use of synthesizers. The band viewed the period as a low point, as they were still reeling from Curtis' death. Hook commented that the only positive thing to come out of the Movement sessions was that producer Martin Hannett had showed the band how to use a mixing board, which allowed them to produce records by themselves from then on. More recently, Hook indicated a change of heart. "I think Movement gets a raw deal in general, really for me. When you consider the circumstances in which it was written, it is a fantastic record." New Order visited New York City again in 1981, where the band were introduced to post-disco, Latin freestyle, and electro. The band had taken to listening to Italian disco to cheer themselves up, while Morris taught himself drum programming. The singles that followed, Everything's Gone Green, and Temptation, saw a change in direction toward dance music. The Horse Section Nyenda, Factory Records' own nightclub, opened in May 1982 in Manchester and was even issued a factory catalogue number, FAC 51. The opening of UK's first ever superclub was marked by a nearly 23-minute instrumental piece originally entitled Prime 586, but released 15 years later as Video 586. Composed primarily by Sumner and Morris, Prime 586/Video 586 was an early version of 586 that contained rhythm elements that would later surface on Blue Monday, and Ultraviolence. Power, Corruption and Lies, 1983–1984, Power, Corruption and Lies, released in May 1983, was a synthesizer-based outing and a dramatic change in sound from Joy Division and the preceding album, although the band had been hinting at the increased use of technology during the music-making process for a number of years then, including their work as Joy Division. Starting from what earlier singles had hinted, this was where the band had found their footing, mixing early techno music with their earlier guitar-based sound and showing the strong influence of acts like Kraftwerk and Giorgio Moroder. Even further in this direction was the electronically sequenced, Four on the Floor single Blue Monday. Inspired by Klein and MBO's Dirty Talk, and Sylvester's disco classic, You Make Me Feel, Blue Monday became the best-selling independent 12 single of all time in the UK. However, it was not on the track list of Power, Corruption and Lies. This resulted in a sticker being applied to unsold copies of Power, Corruption and Lies albums saying, does not contain Blue Monday. Blue Monday is now included on the 2008 collector's edition of Power, Corruption and Lies. The 1983 single Confusion firmly established the group as a dance music force, inspiring many musicians in subsequent years. In 1984 they followed the largely synthesized single Thieves Like Us with the heavy guitar drum bass rumble of Murder, a not too distant cousin of Ecstasy from the Power, Corruption and Lies album. Low Life, Brotherhood, and Substance, 1985–1987, 1985's Low Life refined and sometimes mixed the two styles, brandishing the perfect kiss the video for which was filmed by Jonathan Demme and Subculture. In February 1986, the soundtrack album To Pretty in Pink featuring Shell Shock was released on A&M Records. An instrumental version of Thieves Like Us, and the instrumental Elegia appeared in the film but were not on the soundtrack album. Later that summer, New Order headlined a lineup that included The Smiths, The Fall, and A Certain Ratio during the festival of the 10th summer at Manchester's G-Mex. Brotherhood divided the two approaches onto separate album sides. The album notably featured Bizarre Love Triangle, and Angel Dust, a track which marries a synth breakbeat with low-life era guitar effects. While New Order toured North America with friends Echo and the Bunnyman, the summer of 1987 saw the release of the compilation Substance, which featured the new single True Faith. Substance was an important album in collecting the group's 12-inch singles onto CD for the first time and featured new versions of Temptation, and Confusion referred to as Temptation 87, and Confusion 87. A second disc featured several of the B-sides from the singles on the first disc, as well as additional A-sides Procession, and Murder. The single, True Faith, with its surreal video, became a hit on MTV and the band's first American Top 40 hit. The single's B-side, 1963 originally planned on being the A-side until the group's label convinced them to release True Faith instead. Would later be released as a single in its own right several years later, with two new versions. Technique, Republic and First Breakup, 1988–1993. By this time, the group was heavily influenced by the Balearic House, Detroit techno and Chicago house sounds of Ibiza and the acid house tunes making their way into the Hacienda. Partly recorded at Mediterranean Sound Studios on Ibiza, Technique was released in February 1989. The album entered the charts at number 1 in the UK and contained a mix of the acid house, ambient techno, ambient house, chill-out influence and a more traditional guitar-bass drums sound and left-field sound on others. The album is a blend of occasionally upbeat, later 808 state and effects Twin and the Orb and other ambient house artists' influences experimentally house and ambient techno sound, accessible music coupled with blunt, poignant lyrics. During the summer of 1989, New Order supported Technique by touring with Public Image Limited, Throwing Muses and the Sugar Kibs across the United States and Canada in what was the press dubbed the Monsters of Alternative Rock Tour. Also New Order recorded the official song of the England national football team's 1990 World Cup campaign, World in Motion, under the ad hoc band name England New Order. The song, co-written with comedian Keith Allen, was a #1 UK hit. New Order never had a formal contract with their label Factory Records, which is unusual for any major group. Because of this, the group legally owned all their own recorded material. This has often been cited, not least by Wilson himself, as the main reason London Records' 1992 offer to buy the ailing label fell through. Republic, released around the world in 1993, was the band's first album release since parting company with the now-defunct Factory Records. The release spawned the singles Regret their highest charting single in the US Ruined in a Day, World, and Spooky. Following the release of Republic, the band put New Order on hold while each member continued on with their own side projects. In 1994, a second singles collection was released, entitled The Best of New Order. It featured all of the band's singles since Substance as well as a few extra tracks, Vanishing Point, The Perfect Kiss, Thieves Like Us, Shell Shock, and new recordings of True Faith, Bizarre Love Triangle, 1963, and Round and Round. The new versions of True Faith, and 1963 the latter with a yet newer, more guitar-oriented version produced by Arthur Baker were released as singles to promote the album. In the US, the track listing was altered to set it apart from Substance as well as the UK release of The Best of New Order which had been available months prior. This collection was followed by a remix album, The Rest of New Order, featuring a selection of old remixes and newly commissioned mixes of classic New Order tracks. Some versions contained an extra disc cassette composed entirely of remixes of Blue Monday. Blue Monday was released as a single for a third time to promote the collection. Reformation and Get Ready, 1998–2003, the group reconvened in 1998 at the suggestion of Rob Gretton. Nearly 5 years had passed since they had last seen each other. Sumner said, "We decided before we agreed to doing any gig, to have a meeting, and if anyone had any grudges to bear, to iron them out." By the second meeting everyone agreed to continue playing, scheduling their reunion gig for the Phoenix Festival that same year. In addition to rarer songs, New Order also decided to begin playing Joy Division songs again. When the Phoenix Festival was cancelled due to low ticket sales, New Order instead played the last night of that year's Reading Festival. Their 2001 release Get Ready largely departed from their more electronic style and focused on the more guitar-oriented music. According to Sumner, Get Ready was guitar-heavy simply because we felt that we'd left that instrument alone for a long time. Longtime fan Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins played guitar and sang backup on the track Turn My Way, and in 2001 toured with the band on dates in the UK, US, and Japan for a short period of time. Phil Cunningham joined the band in a live capacity, deputizing for Gilbert who declined to tour in favor of caring for her and Morris' children. Primal Scream's Bobby Gillespie provided vocals on the track Rock the Shack. Singles from the album included Crystal, 60 Miles an Hour, and Someone Like You. In 2002, Q featured New Order on their list of the 50 bands to see before you die, although this was as part of a sub-list of 5 bands that could go either way. Both New Order and Joy Division were portrayed in the Michael Winterbottom film 24-Hour Party People, depicting the rise and fall of Factory Records as seen through the eyes of label founder Tony Wilson. Cameos by Wilson himself, along with Mark E. Smith of The Fall and former members of Happy Mondays and In Spiral Carpets, lent a degree of legitimacy to the proceedings. The film touched on some of Factory's other artists, including Happy Mondays and the Jurati Column. The soundtrack featured Get Ready era Chemical Brothers' produced Here to Stay, which was released as a single. The DVD release of the single highlighted scenes taken from the film. Waiting for the Siren's Call, Singles and Second Breakup, 2004 2007, the band released a new album on March 27, 2005, entitled Waiting for the Siren's Call, their first with new member Phil Cunningham. Cunningham replaced Gilbert so she could look after their children. Singles from this album were Crafty, Jetstream, and the title track. At the 2005 NME Awards, New Order and Joy Division received the award for Godlike Geniuses. Previous winners include Ozzy Osbourne, The Clash, and Happy Mondays. In 2006 the album track Guilt is a Useless Emotion was nominated for a Grammy Award in the category of Best Dance Recording. In the autumn of 2005, the group released another Greatest Hits compilation, in the form of singles. The two-disc release was an updated version of the Substance collection and contained every single released from their 1981 debut all the way through to Waiting for the Siren's Call. However, unlike Substance, which focused almost exclusively on the 12" versions of the group's singles, Singles collected the 7 versions, many of which had never been released on CD. The album was accompanied by a 2-disc DVD set, entitled Item, that collected the extended UK version of New Order's story with a DVD of all New Order music videos as well as 2 newly commissioned videos for Temptation 87, and Ceremony. The New Order, Live in Glasgow DVD was recorded at the Glasgow Academy in 2006 and features 18 tracks, including 4 Joy Division songs. Next to that, the release also contains a bonus disc of footage from the band's personal archive including 1980s footage from Glastonbury, Rome, Cork, Rotterdam and Toronto. In 2006, the band played several one-off live dates as well as short tours in the UK, Brazil and Argentina. At the end of the Buenos Aires show in November 2006, Peter Hook suggested that the band should stop touring. In early May 2007, bassist Peter Hook was interviewed by British radio station XFM originally to talk about his contribution to the debut album of former Jane's Addiction singer Perry Farrell's new band Satellite Party, saying that, "Me and Bernard Sumner aren't working together." Further complicating the news, New Order Online, a website with support from New Order management, reported that, according to a source close to the band, the news about the split is false. New Order still exists despite what Hook said. Peter Hook can leave the band, but this doesn't mean the end of New Order. The band however dissolved and Sumner revealed in 2009 that he no longer wished to make music as New Order. Reunion with new lineup, Lost Sirens, 2011 present. In September 2011, the band announced that they would perform for the first time since 2006, at the Annecy en Belgique, Brussels on October 17 and at the Bataclan, Paris on October 18. The band's lineup included keyboardist Gillian Gilbert, who returned to the band after a 10-year break, and Bad Lieutenant bassist Tom Chapman in place of Peter Hook. He played subsequent shows in London and South America in December. In December 2011, New Order released Live at the London Troxy, a live album from their December 10, 2011 performance at the Troxy in London. This release featured the new lineup and their first show in London in over 5 years. They continued to tour throughout 2012, including a short tour of New Zealand and Australia in February-March. He played at the Tea in the Park Festival in Scotland on 3 and 4 July 2012 and at the Exit Festival in Novi Sad, Serbia on July 13, 2012. New Order performed at Hyde Park with Blur and the Specials to celebrate the 2012 Summer Olympics closing ceremony. In December 2012 it was announced that Lost Sirens would be released in the United Kingdom on January 14, 2013. Lost Sirens is an 8-track album of tracks left out of Waiting for the Siren's Call. The album was discussed by Gillian Gilbert in a Brazilian interview to promote the band unregistered trademark appearance in Sao Paulo. She acknowledged issues with former member Peter Hook, and stated there was a lot going on behind the scenes on the copyright delaying the release. The band are presently working on new material, and debuted their first newly written song since the Waiting for the Sirens Call sessions during Lollapalooza Chile in March 2014. The song was initially performed without an official name, but now has a confirmed title of Singularity. Other projects. In 1988, Bernard Sumner teamed up with former Smiths guitarist Johnny Marr for the electronic project. Sumner worked with Marr in 1996 for second time in electronic for Raise the Pressure. Carl Bartos also assisted with this record. The project's third album Twisted Tenderness was released in 1999, after which the band dissolved. In June 2009, Bernard Sumner formed a new band called Bad Lieutenant with Phil Cunningham and Jake Evans, that completed an album, Never Cry Another Tear, which was released on October 5, 2009. In addition to Cunningham and Evans, the album also features appearances by Stephen Morris, Jack Mitchell, Tom Chapman and Alex James. The live band includes Morris on drums and Tom Chapman on bass. Hook has been involved with several other projects. In the 1990s, Hook recorded with Killing Joke with a view to joining the band. However, original bassist Martin Youth Glover instead returned to the band. In 1995 he toured with the Jurati Column. He has recorded one album with the band Revenge and two with Monaco with David Potts, the latter of which scored a club and alternative radio hit, What Do You Want From Me? in 1997. He also worked on a new band project called Freebus with bass players Marnie and Andy Rourke, active from 2007 to 2010. He also contributed to Perry Farrell's Satellite Party. Currently, Hook's new band The Light is touring playing Joy Division's albums and New Order first two albums. In 1990 Gilbert and Morris formed their own band, The Other Two. The Other Two released its first single Tasty Fish in 1991 and released two albums, The Other Two and You in 1993 and Superhighways 1999. In 2007, Gilbert and Morris remixed two tracks for the Nine Inch Nails Remixes album Year Zero Remixed. B-Music was a name the band used for their publishing company. All four members of the band used the name for production work for other artists' recordings between 1982 and 1985. The first B-Music credit was for Peter Hook producing Stockholm Monsters in 1982. Other artists with producer or musician credit for B-Music were 52nd Street, Section 25, Marcel King, Quando Quango, Paul Haig, Vic Pigeon, Niam Niam and Life. Their production work as B-Music was collected on two LTM Recordings compilation CDs, Cool as Ice, The B-Music Productions and Twice as Nice. Sound. Both New Order and Joy Division were among the most successful artists on the Factory Records label, run by Granada television personality Tony Wilson, and partnered with Factory in the financing of the Manchester club The Horse Section Nyenda. The band rarely gave interviews in the 1980s, later ascribing this to not wanting to discuss Curtis. This, along with the Peter Saville sleeve designs and a tendency to give short performances with no encores, gave New Order a reputation as standoffish. The band became more open in the 90s. For example, the aforementioned New Order story featured extensive personal interviews. Their music mixes rock with dance music, as can be seen on signature tracks such as True Faith and Temptation. This synthesis laid down the groundwork for dance rock groups of today. The group's album art earned them the status of icons in the alternative community, and has shown considerable longevity. They have heavily influenced techno, rock, and pop musicians including Pet Shop Boys, The Killers and Moby, and were themselves influenced by the likes of David Bowie, New Kraftwerk, Cabaret Voltaire and Giorgio Moroder. They have also significantly influenced electro, freestyle and house. The Kraftwerk influence was acknowledged by their single Crafty, which had cover art referencing Autobahn. Bassist Peter Hook contributed to New Order's sound by developing an idiosyncratic bass guitar technique. He often used the bass as a lead instrument, playing melodies on the high strings with the signature heavy chorus effect, leaving the actual bass lines to keyboards or sequencers. This has often been cited as the defining characteristic of the New Order sound. Drummer Stephen Morris regularly played a mixture of acoustic and electronic drums, and in many cases played along seamlessly with sequenced parts. All the band members could and did switch instruments throughout gigs, as evidenced on Jonathan Demme's video for The Perfect Kiss, and the fairly common Taras Shevchenko and Pumped Full of Drugs concert videos. In particular, Gilbert, Morris, and Sumner could be seen playing keyboards at times, while Hook played electronic drums variously. Comes to an end. Album covers. Almost all New Order recordings bore the minimalist packaging of Peter Saville. The group's record sleeves bucked the 1980s trend by rarely showing the band members or even providing basic information such as the band name or the title of the release. Song names were often hidden within the shrink-wrapped package, either on the disc itself or on an inconspicuous part of an inner sleeve, or a cryptic color code invented by Saville. Saville said his intention was to sell the band as a mass-produced secret of sorts, and that the minimalist style was enough to allow fans to identify the band's products without explicit labeling. Saville frequently sent the artwork straight to the printer, unreviewed by either the band or the label. Song titles. Many New Order song titles have nothing to do with the song. In some cases, song titles appear as lyrics in other songs. For example, the phrase "This Time of Night" appears in the song as it is when it was on Brotherhood but is the title of a song on Low Life, and Face Up from Low Life features the phrase "In a Lonely Place," the title of the B-side to Ceremony. Also, the track Chemical from the 1993 album Republic featured the word Brotherhood, which was the name of the 1986 album. Other song titles were taken from the titles of old movies such as Thieves Like Us and Cries and Whispers, and the film Whistle Down the Wind is mentioned in the lyrics of Vanishing Point on the 1989 album Technique, an album which is otherwise notable for not including any of its song title phrases in the lyrics of any of the 9 tracks, although the phrase Fine Time does appear on Joy Division's song Transmission. This practice appears to have been discontinued after the 1980s, given that on Republic several songs contain their titles, and on Get Ready most song lyrics contain their titles except Slow Jam, Close Range, and Run Wild. Similarly, the songs on Waiting for the Siren's Call contain their titles with the exception of Who's Joe, Crafty, and Guilt is a Useless Emotion. Band members: Bernard Sumner, a Euro-led vocals, guitar, synthesizers, programming; Stephen Morris, a Euro drums and percussion, synthesizers, programming; Gillian Gilbert, a Euro synthesizers, programming, guitars; Phil Cunningham, a Euro synthesizers, programming, guitars, electronic drums; Tom Chapman, a Euro bass, synthesizers, programming. Former members: Peter Hook, a Euro bass, electronic drums, vocals, synthesizers, programming. Discography: Movement, Power, Corruption and Lies, Low Life, Brotherhood, Technique, Republic, Get Ready, Waiting for the Siren's Call, Lost Sirens. References. Further reading: Hickey, Dec. From Heaven to Heaven. New Order Live. The Early Years at Close Quarters. London, Dec Hickey, 2012. Edge, Brian. New Order plus Joy Division, Pleasures and Wayward Distractions. London, Omnibus Press, 1988. Flowers, Claude. New Order plus Joy Division, Dreams Never End. London, Omnibus Press, 1995. Johnson, Mark. An Ideal for Living, An History of Joy Division. London, Bobcat Books, 1984. Middles, Mick. From Joy Division to New Order, The Factory Story. London, Virgin Books, 1996. External links: NewOrderNow.net, a Euro official band website; New Order Online, a Euro band endorsed fan site.